I'm very honored to be here. It's exciting to hear your journey, even from the classroom, because so many people would think, well, if you've spoken in front of a bunch of little kids, surely you can speak in front of a bunch of grown-ups. But I agree, it's that preparation time that makes so much difference. And how you prepare yourself to be in front of a crowd is enormous. But it's not just how you prepare, it's do you prepare and what do you prepare? And really what I want to talk about today is being a little more productive in everything that you do. Your explanation of the Pomodoro technique is brilliant. The idea that we really only need 25 minutes of focused time. But it's not how much time we spend, and it's not do we practice that we mess up. Really, it's what do we practice? I have 4 grown children and 10 who call my wife and I Lolly and Poppy. We'll be married 29 years this year. And from time to time, I'm asked to stay with one of the kiddos while mom has to go do something. And so I get to be Poppy for a little bit and spend some time with the little ones. And recently I had one in the potty training phase. If you remember that phase of life, then you know there are all kinds of instances that come up. I was sitting on the couch, the little one's playing in the other room, having a great time. Suddenly things go quiet. If you've raised kids, you know what that means. That's a bit of a problem. I began to look around the house to see exactly where this little one was. And sure enough, he met me halfway. Standing in the door jamb, he looked at me with this very concerned look on his face. And he said to me, "Poppy, somebody pooped in my pants." And I realized there's only so many people qualified to do that. I mean, there's only so many people who have access to do that. But as we think about the idea of being productive, the same thing is true. There's only so many people in your life who are qualified to be productive. There are only so many people in your life with your issues, with your problems, with your work to get done, with the things that you need to solve, who are qualified to solve them, who have access to everything you have access to solve. And maybe you've had the time where you've had to train somebody else in a job that you do. Maybe you're training them to take your job so you can move on to the next job. Maybe you're training them to do your job just to share the workload. But training them to do your job takes a certain amount of time. And you have to decide early on, how much time will I spend training versus how much time will I spend doing? It kind of goes back to that practice thing, but remember this, practice does not make perfect. That's a myth. Practice makes permanent, which means if you keep doing it and you're doing it wrong, guess what you're going to do? More of it wrong. And if you're training someone and the way that you're training them is wrong, then they're going to continue to do it wrong, incorrectly, inefficiently, ineffectively. And for that reason, many of us in leadership, and I don't care if you're talking about retail leadership or parenting, the reality is as you lead, sometimes you decide it's easier just to do it myself than to train somebody else to do it because it takes so much time. So the first word that I really want you to think about when it comes to being more productive is to prioritize. Everybody knows that's true. Maybe you've heard of the Pareto principle. The Pareto principle says that of all the things you do in the course of the day, 80% of them are actually beneficial to your success. No, it doesn't. 80% of them are a waste of your time. 20% of them, 20% of all the things you do in the course of the day are beneficial to your success. That means if you have a to-do list with 10 things on it, and you were to look over that list on Monday and say, okay, here's the 10 things I have to get done today. Chances are 80% of those things will mean nothing to your success. They'll take up your time. Maybe you would call it the tyranny of the urgent. They're going to demand that you take time to do them, but they're really not benefiting your success. 20% of those things. So out of 10 things on your list, 2 of them. So prioritize is a huge factor. You've got to be able to look at that list of 10 things and go, okay, what will I spend my time on? What will I try to delegate? What will I train somebody else to do? What will I move on without? What will I put in that category of if I don't get to it today, that's okay. Now, once you've figured out what those 2 things are, I'm going to give you the next big word that I want you to think about, and that is to protect. Because immediately that you pick those two big things. Now, I'm going to be honest with you and tell you, sometimes you look at that list of 10 things and you're like, well, I'll just knock out these little ones. But if you've had days like I've had days, like today, I've been gone for a week, traveling around, doing other broadcast stuff. I come back to my own studio, and it's like every electrical thing in here has lost its mind. It doesn't want to do right. It doesn't want to log in right. The power cord is missing. Somebody's borrowed it for something else, and now the battery is dead. And so I have to reboot it and start all over again, and then enter new passwords. And you see what I'm saying? You think, well, I'll just turn on the computer. It seems like one out of those 10 things, that's the easy one. But we often forget all the little things behind the scenes of the easy ones. We make that one phone call. I'm just going to call and cancel that appointment or reschedule it so that I can focus on my day. Well, we prioritize. We know what the two things are. We'll just look at maybe just a couple of these little ones. We'll spend some time on them. But then you realize that when you dive into that, it's like a rabbit hole. The minute you make that first phone call, send that first email, there are tens of people, dozens of, hundreds of people who now want your time. Well, you're on the phone. Maybe it's the social media. Well, I just need to reply to this one Facebook message. And as soon as I do that, phone goes down. But while you have it in your hand, you get 5 more text messages, 6 more emails, and realize I missed coffee with my friend at 2 o'clock. And now you've started the whole process over again. Even if you prioritize your list based on the Pareto principle and you look at all the 10 things, you say there's only 2 that I have to get done today to be the most successful. If you don't protect yourself and your time, the tyranny of the urgent will come in. And I promise you, whatever it is that you think you're working on, it's going to spin out of control with all the little things. I found myself just getting ready for this conversation with my phone telling me, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. My phone is yelling, I'm going to die, because it's at 8%. Well, why is it at 8%? Because I fell asleep after driving 26 hours yesterday, and my puppy decided to cuddle right where the power cord is and unplugged it from the wall. So the phone was plugged into the power cord, but the power cord wasn't plugged into the wall. Do you blame the puppy? Well, no, but you still have the problem. You have a dead phone, and it's going to go off. And at some point, that's going to be a big problem. So I have to stop what I'm doing to deal with the tyranny of the urgent. Something demands something of me. How do you fix that? Protection. You've got to protect your time. Now, here's another word for protection. This is a word men generally have problems with. They compartmentalize. They don't build boundaries. And those are different. Let me tell you how they're different. Men like to compartmentalize. I do it well myself. I think I'm working on this task and nothing will distract me. And if I'm focused on that task, the world could be burning down around me. And that compartmentalize means I am going to stay on this task until I'm done. But sometimes I'm not compartmentalized and I'm not focused. I'm doing a thing, whatever that thing is, mowing the yard, taking a phone call, working on the car, doesn't matter, whatever it is. But when something else comes up that's more interesting, more entertaining, or an opportunity to be someone's hero, so-and-so needs a ride to the airport. These people need you to pick up their groceries and bring them home. Someone needs help carrying in that case of water, whatever it is. Compartmentalized means I can pull out of it, stop doing that thing, and go do something else, and still come back to that thing. What you really need, though, is not just compartmentalized, you need boundaries. It's a hard thing as Poppy to say no. It's a really hard thing to tell my children and my grandchildren no. Now, early on, we were really good at it. No, don't touch that. No, put that down. No, don't eat that. We were really good at no. But the older I get, having raised 2 daughters and 2 sons, having been with my wife almost 30 years now, no is a hard thing for me to say. I don't like to tell them I can't or I won't. I just made a trip. We drove round trip over 40 hours. And the gentleman that I made that trip with, we had a lot of time to spend together. And on the trip back, he looked at me and he said, I noticed something about you, and I thought it was just our relationship. But he said, you love to help anybody, total strangers, people you've known for a long time, people that could benefit you in business. And I heard the words from him in a kind, complimentary way. But I remember my wife saying, you love to help people. And sometimes that means what you need to get done doesn't get done. If you're going to protect your priorities, you're going to have boundaries, which means you have to do what I have a really hard time doing, and that is telling somebody no. No, I can't. No, I won't. No, not because I don't care about you, not because I'm not competent or capable. And sometimes it may be my own insecurity that says, I want to help to prove that I can, that I'm valuable to you, that I'm worthy, that I deserve your attention because I helped. But we've got to be able to say no, because there are certain things like his britches that only he can do. And there are certain things in my life that only I can do. And if I spend too much time helping others, doing for them what they could have done, well, what probably anybody could have done, I get nothing done that only I can do. So first, I've got to prioritize of all of the things that are on my list of coulda-dos today, what are the must-dos today? And what are those must-dos that only I can do that if I don't do them, they don't get done. And if they don't get done, my success is pushed further down the road, further down the line, further from me. My bank account doesn't change. My influence doesn't change. My impact doesn't change. The purpose that I'm on this earth for goes unfulfilled because I helped this one and I helped that one, then I did that, and then I did these things. And I didn't build enough boundaries to say, no, I can't, I won't, not now. Not because I don't care about you, but because those two things on my to-do list, if I don't to-do them, nobody will. I have to do them. Now, once you've picked your priorities and you know that those two things can only be done by you, and no matter what it takes to push everything else aside, if you've got to delegate it, if you've got to hire it out, you've got to do those things and you've got to protect yourself. Now, I'm going to throw a little caveat in here because this seems like a declaration of privilege, and it's not about privilege. It's about priorities and protecting. If you've ever paid someone to watch your children, wash your laundry, take care of your lawn or your garden, take care of your car, take care of your taxes or your books or your accounting, don't think of that as something that is less important and therefore you've handed it off. Because there's two things you need to know about that. One, you've created opportunity for someone else to generate income. That helps them to fulfill their purpose. That helps them to reach their destiny. If they're doing the things that grow their business, if you've got someone who's built negative thing, consider that a positive opportunity on two fronts. Number one, you are prioritized. You are protecting the time that you have to do that. That's number one. That's leading to your own success, which gives you more opportunity to help people like that. But it also means you're helping them to grow their business. Here in our little town, I live in a tiny, some would call it a village of about 10,000 people. And this last weekend, they had what they call Lemonade Day, where they spent several months leading up to that, teaching young people how to build their own business, how you're going to have to buy things in order to sell them. You're going to have to invest before you can generate income. But then you also have to have customer service. You've got to do a good job. You've got to be diligent at what you do. And so these young people had Lemonade Day, and they learned that I can have my own business. That creates a whole different mindset in them of, I'm going to wait for a check to appear in the mail, and I don't know where the check came from or who provided it or what they expect of me, but thank you for sending me a check. No, you're much more in control of your destiny when you have a chance to create opportunity for yourself. Well, if they're going to create the opportunity to make lemonade, why would I waste my time stopping what I'm doing, running to the kitchen and mixing my own lemonade? I should help them grow their business by buying lemonade from them and focusing on my own priorities, protecting my time, not doing those things that don't lead to my success, and paying someone else for whom that is their success. I know that sounds like an edge of privilege, but it really is how economies grow worldwide. If you have an art, a service, a product that you can offer to the world, and you can generate income to be self-sustaining through that, then everyone who participates with you in the free exchange of those ideas and services is growing the economy and growing opportunity. I've spent time in the Congo, and I've watched very enterprising young men grab all the empty water bottles off of the street, all the empty plastic water bottles, and take them to a facility where they personally cleaned and scrubbed and sanitized every one of them. And then they filled them with filtered water. And then they put them in the freezer overnight until they were an ice block. And when it's 112 degrees and you're stuck in traffic for 2 hours, and they come walking by and they want $2 for a bottle of water, you are grateful that they've gone to the trouble to clean the bottles, to sanitize the bottles, to fill them with filtered water, to freeze them to ice, so you can just suck on that little water popsicle when it's sweltering hot outside. And their ingenuity and their effort becomes your opportunity, their opportunity to generate independence and your opportunity not to suffer in the heat. I know that's an aside, but when we talk about prioritizing and protecting, sometimes the best thing we can do to prioritize our task is to ask ourselves, how many of the things that need to get done in my day could I pay somebody else for, which would create opportunity for them and still prioritize and protect the most important things in my life? Now, finally, I'm going to give you this is the hard one. This really is the hard one. Perform. Because it's really easy, like I said, to just check that one message, just send that one text, just schedule that one thing on your appointment. And then suddenly it's a flood of new opportunities to play on your devices. And I don't care if it's your iPad or your laptop or your phone, it doesn't matter what device it is. It may be hanging out at the coffee shop. You got to meet that one friend and then you find yourself there for hours reading books and chatting with people and playing in the internet cafe. But you've got to actually perform those 2 tasks. If you've decided out of 10 that you have 2, that the world cannot live without you getting done, that your success will not move forward without getting those 2 things done. You got to do them. This really is the hard part. You got to actually do what needs to be done. I remember when I was a kid, my uncle would take care of a ranch for somebody else. And there was a time that we had just strung a very long fence, and we had put up all the barbed wire and stretched it across the poles, and it took a lot of work. It took the majority of the summer. And when we were finished, we'd released the cattle into that farm. And in that area, we were driving to ensure that the posts had held and none of the cattle had escaped and that everything was good. And we found an old bull who had tried to push the fence over and got his leg wrapped up in the bottom strand of the barbed wire. And he was mad. He was big mad. He was kicking, he was snorting, he was throwing his horns around, he was all over the place. And my uncle and I sat on the tailgate of the truck and we watched him for several minutes. And I said, what are we going to do? He said, there really is only one solution. I said, well, do we like hold his head still while somebody else unwraps the barbed wire from his foot? I mean, how do we get him to pull his foot out of there? It's lashed in there pretty tight. And he said, no. There's only one solution. I said, well, can we convince the bull somehow to get himself out of there? He said, no, if you leave him there long enough, he's going to do 2 things. He's going to tear the whole fence down, number 1. And number 2, he's going to injure himself significantly in the process, probably breaking his leg, eventually ripping it off in the barbed wire. I said, okay, so what's the one solution? He goes, oh, well, it means we have to start our work over again. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, the only way to get that bull out of that fence is to realize if you get too close to him, he's going to gore you. He's in pain. He's angry. He's big mad. And if you get too close, he's going to lay all of his anger out on you. He doesn't know you have nothing to do with it. He doesn't know you're not the one hurting him, and he doesn't care. He just knows that he wants free. So what we have to do is go down the fence of 20 yards or so where he can't get to us. And we have to cut the fence that we just built. That'll provide enough slack for his leg to slip out, and eventually his tossing and turning will pull him out and he'll walk away free. And I said, but we just spent the whole summer putting that fence up. And he said, yep. And if you want to do the right thing, we have to do it again. Not because we did anything wrong, but because someone else made a bad decision, the bull. And the only way to undo their bad decision is for us to do our work again. Okay, big task, big assignment, but there was no other way to get it done. When you prioritize those 2 things, when you realize that my success isn't going to happen until I protect myself and I focus on those 2 things, it may be as mundane and miserable as stringing fence in the hot sun. Very well could be. That's okay. because somebody's got to do it. And if you don't perform that task, it won't get done. Practice, remember, doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. If you keep doing it and you're doing it wrong, then that's not going to help. So you're going to have to perform the task properly until it's done, and it's done right. I do a lot of Master of Ceremony speaking for a group called the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. That's easy for me to say. But one of their taglines is, until it's done. We're not looking for a temporary cure. We want this to be gone. We don't want anybody to have cystic fibrosis anymore. And they've made great treadway over the many, many years that they've been doing what they do. I've been working with them for about 12 years. And when I started, it was common that the average person with CF would live to their mid-20s. We now have people who have lived into their 30s, 40s, and even 50s, living a full life while struggling with CF. Until the cure is found, until it's done. How long do you perform? Until it's done. Maybe that's on the top of your list today. Maybe it was on the top of your list on Monday of last week. Maybe it will be on the top of your list a month from now. Do it. Do what must be done. Do it diligently until it is done. Perform. Productivity doesn't happen until you perform. Wishing it to happen, not going to make it happen. Wanting it to happen, not going to make it happen. Delegating it, making excuses, blaming it on somebody else. Only one person can poop in your pants. It's you. You're going to have to get it done right. And that's going to require an attitude. Now, let me tell you what drives attitude. This is my last thought on this. But the attitude that you have to perform the task that you have protected and prioritized. The attitude that you're going to need to do that starts with the story that you're telling yourself. You heard in the intro the mention of story power. I teach a thing called the Story Power Masterclass, and it is a great class for those who are public presenters or those who are leaders, and the things that they say on a microphone or in front of a crowd are significantly important to the way they communicate and connect with their audience. But let me tell you something, the story you're telling yourself when you look in the mirror, that can make you or break you. That story will drive your attitude, and your attitude is more important than anything else in the world. With a bad attitude, you lose every time. Zig Ziglar used to say your attitude determines your altitude. How high you're going to go in life, how far you're going to go in life, directly related to your attitude. Dr. Caroline Leaf is a neuroscientist with more than 3 decades in the industry. In her research, she says straight up, your attitude is what you think about how you feel, and how you feel about what you think. So whether it comes into your mind in your life as a thought first, and then you react to it emotionally, and that develops your attitude, or it comes into your emotions first and you react to something, and then you begin to meditate on that thought and realize that's a negative thing, whichever one of those two it is, that attitude is going to drive your behavior. That behavior will drive your performance, for better or worse. If you want to be productive in life, you're going to have to prioritize the things that need your attention and set aside the things that don't. You're going to have to protect yourself by building boundaries and knowing when to say